live stream. The podcast is where I have conversations with suicide attempt survivors and ideators, and those episodes come out every Monday. And more recently, I've been publishing or releasing episodes with conversations with past guests on Thursdays. Those are update episodes. So if you're curious and you want to hear them, you could do that on Apple or Spotify or right here on YouTube. But these are conversations with prior guests, past guests. I have 3 of them here with me today, and I'm very thankful they're here. And we're going to talk about suicide notes, which is an interesting topic because I think sometimes when people see the word or title suicide noted, they think that's what this podcast is about. It comes up from time to time. It's not really what the podcast is about. I am joined today by Michelle, who resides in Japan, Carrie, who resides in Canada. We're doing just countries today, and Henri, who resides in the United States of America. So we have 4 people and 3 countries. How cool is that? And we're all talking about suicide, and we're all talking about suicide notes in particular. And I should add, if you are seeing this live, you should have the ability to comment. So please, if you have a question or a comment, by all means, send it, and I will share it with my guests, Michelle, Carrie, and Henri. And if they want to answer, they will. And if they don't, well, they won't. So my question for all of you, because you are all suicide attempt survivors, is this. Did you or have you ever written a suicide note? Straightforward. Who wants to start?
I can start.
All right, Henri, what you got?
I have never written a suicide note.
Now, of course, only share what you want. How many suicide attempts do you have? Because that's connected to this question.
More than 30. Most of them were in elementary school.
Right. And if you're curious, by the way, you can find Henri's episode and Michelle's episode and Carrie's episode. Just scroll down some and you'll find them, and you can learn more about each of them if you'd like. Proud of the conversations we've had. So you've had more than 30. So I suppose I'm wondering, if I may probe a little bit, you were young, so that might be part of the reason, but is there a reason why you didn't write a note?
So the earliest attempts, I don't think I was even aware of the word suicide.
Right.
So the thought of leaving a note just never even crossed my mind. But after I'd stabbed myself when I was 12, I did have a sibling who wanted to know why I didn't leave a note, and I didn't have an answer because it didn't occur to me. I felt really embarrassed too. Like, oh gosh, I did suicide wrong. I was supposed to leave a note. Right. I didn't know that.
I don't think there's a way to do it wrong, but right. I don't know, maybe. And then did you have any attempts when you were older?
Yep, sure did.
So at that point, you knew about the idea of notes.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't think about it, or was just like, nah, it's just not, don't feel the need to?
I don't know. I mean, like, I think I get so tunnel vision that the thought of writing a note for the people I leave behind, it just doesn't come up for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what that says about me as a person, if it just means that that in those moments when I've been suicidal, that I've been a person in crisis. And again, I've had that just extreme tunnel vision, or if it means I'm selfish or forgetful.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Even though in the sort of earlier I said that the Suicide Noted podcast, it's not about notes. It was a bit of a double entendre play on words. Much more about noted meaning heard, understood, validated, that kind of thing. But I've come to think of it as, in a way, because of the nature of podcasts and the likelihood of them sort of living and breathing and existing for presumably like decades in the future, for some people, it does sort of occupy that space, that it could be found by people who are wondering what that person was going through, and in a kind of weird way is an extended audio note. You know, just a thought.
I think for some of your guests, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of fascinating. Carrie or Michelle, I'm not putting either of you on the spot. Do either of you want to share that original question or respond to it, which is, did you leave one? Let's go with.
I'll go.
Okay, Michelle, great.
So no.
Mm.
No, I did not. It's kind of so what I was thinking about is that I've often thought about notes, thought about what I would put in them, planned them. But whenever I'm at a point where I'm like that heavily considering, it's not on my mind yet. And maybe that has something to say about the impulsiveness of the feeling. That it is just kind of an impulse that just hits really hard at a certain moment. And so the all the like the pre-planning and trying to organize around that kind of goes out the window in that moment for me. But also I think what you said is about the podcast is interesting, because I think it very unintentionally ended up being that way for me with my episode. I didn't plan for that to be the case. I planned to talk more about, my feelings around it, my feelings around the topic and everything. But instead, what came out was a lot of stuff that had never been put into one cohesive picture, that I realized I could show to people who needed to know what that was, people in my family and so on. And so it ended up kind of becoming almost like a preemptive note, because at least a couple of my family members did hear it. And temporarily, at least, it changed how they approached the topic of me, being suicidal. But the main most serious attempts that I had were when I was very young, before like 16 and younger. So at that time, the idea of writing a note was not really, in my consciousness. Same way that like self-harm wasn't in my consciousness, even though it was something that I was actively trying to do. I didn't know how to do it. I guess some people just figure it out organically, but I think other people find it through other people, and that was not an option for me in my tiny little closed bubble. So being in like a tiny little Christian closed bubble, I really didn't have sort of that language around it, those ideas. Now I do. And what is interesting, though, is that instead of writing a note, what I have now is a emergency note that stays in my apartment, so that if something ever happens to me, whether it's suicide or just natural something, whatever, whoever comes in, to my apartment to handle what's there, has all the passwords and information needed to tell everybody, contact everybody and tell everyone what has happened.
Like practical stuff.
Yeah, practical level.
Gotcha.
But in terms of, things about why and all that kind of stuff, like, I feel like the people who need to know probably already know at this point. And if not, they can go find the podcast.
One more listener. But for you, and I suppose this could apply to Henri too, but no pressure to either of you to answer ever. But if suicide were an option for you, or something you attempted again, at this point in your life, has something or anything shifted where you might put pen to paper, or in these days it could be on your phone or elsewhere, different ways of doing a similar idea?
I think, yes. As I often lament, Japan doesn't have guns, so it takes out one of the most easy ways to do something like that. And also it has extremely strict regulations on medication. So like two of the biggies are kind of gone. And so the lack of that means that any attempt that I would make would probably be something impulsive,
I see.
as opposed to something planned. So if I were actually able to do something that was more planned, there would be a note. But
Right.
if I was going to do something, jumping off of a building or in front of a train or something, like, I'm not going to leave a note for that because it's not going to be something that I have planned out.
You'd have to be a very fast writer.
Yeah.
Like, remarkably. Don't joke about suicide, Sean. Ever. This is not a subject where people should be smiling or laughing. It's very serious, and it is. However, we've agreed that sometimes we can find moments of levity or humor. I think that's okay.
I think it's needed.
I don't know why my tone of voice is changing when I say that. I'm going to move to Carrie. Carrie, I see you're here, so maybe I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but can you answer, or would you answer that question? And if you could lead with how many attempts you have, so we have some context.
Yeah, I've kind of lost count, but I think it's 5.
Okay.
And the reason I lost count is because there was 10 years of my life that I was so heavily medicated by a psychiatrist that I kind of almost don't have much memory of that whole time period. And yes, I have left notes. It's such a weird thing because I feel like the whole note thing is kind of, it's another one of those aspects that's been Hollywoodized, kind of. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's this sort of almost romanticized version when someone takes their own life and they have the wherewithal to write a note and stuff. It's so different than that when it's actually happening to you. It's such a dissociative way of being when you get to that point. Like, I can't imagine being in the throes in my experiences. I couldn't imagine being in the throes of the moment where I'm actually committing to something that I would take time out to, like, be eloquent. You know what I mean? But I have written notes in when I've been in really, really bad times, and I've been like, something could happen. Like, I feel like I'm really walking the edge right now. And I've written notes kind of like in my journals.
Okay.
Thinking, mostly because I just feel so shitty about leaving my kids without some kind of explanation. But then I've also then, like, been pretty quick to destroy them because I don't know, it's just such a whole weird thing where, that whole sentiment that people who are talking about suicide are just attention seeking, but people who actually take their own lives, oh, they were such a wonderful person and we should have known, or whatever, right? Like, I when I've written notes or journaled stuff, I've been in that place in my head where I'm kind of being the judge and the jury at the same time and thinking, oh, this sounds so stupid and so overly dramatic, and I'm just attention seeking, or this is what people would think of me. Like, the people pleaser really comes out. So I struggled a lot with that. But I wanted to just tell you the story of the last attempt, which was 5 years ago, I think. About 5 years. I just wrote on a piece of paper, "Do not resuscitate."
Practical also.
And nobody listened to me. They resuscitated.
Wow. I know people that have gotten, like, DNR a tattoo, right? But I
I've
guess
thought
that's
about that.
not like a legally binding thing. So, who
Well, and
knows?
I thought that it would be honored, because it was like, clearly I had laid it right beside me.
Yeah. And you would have
So it
died?
wasn't.
You would have died?
It's hard to say. I took an overdose. I may have. Yeah. But somebody, I don't know how that works. I didn't really understand how that works when you get into the hospital system. But
right.
my mother found me, and she called 911 right away, and they came and took me, and then I had a horrible experience. That was right during COVID.
Yeah. It wasn't that long after that we talked for the first time.
Yeah,
Might have
that's
been-
right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And you know what's interesting that you said, I'm digressing slightly. It's like, so you say that when someone completes, I won't use the word succeeds, another word we're not supposed to use. Oh, by the way, Carrie, you use the word commit. You're not supposed to use that word either. Let's just start language policing the fuck out of each other.
Well,
That
I
always
thought
helps.
about that as I was saying the
No,
word
no.
commit, but
Yeah. You say whatever you want to say. You know, I'm playing.
in
But
that moment, I actually meant commit. I didn't mean like in the colloquial sense, commit suicide. I meant
yeah.
committing to something in my mind,
Oh,
like,
okay. Words.
yeah.
But you'd said something about how people tend to respond once the person's gone versus once they are, you know, so when they're gone, they were so lovely, they were so this, but when they're if they find out they've tried, then they're attention seeking. It's like, imagine that shift if people just thought that when someone was trying or they attempted, and we just put that, oh, they're such a lovely person on that,
Mhm.
how the narrative changes and how that just flows into all other kinds of things that would presumably help. Like, this is just a lovely human being who's in a tremendous amount of pain, and just made that assumption, because that's what you're doing anyway when you say they're attention seeking. You're just making assumptions. So wow, what a shift that would be.
I was
Dare I
definitely,
agree, Henry? What?
I was definitely considered attention seeking.
Yeah.
Yeah, when when I'd really seriously injured myself. I think it would have been really nice if I had been treated kindly like that. Like, oh, this poor kid is an otherwise lovely person and really suffering. It might have really changed the course of my life.
And I would
But I was
imagine,
labeled an attention seeker and I was treated very badly.
and I haven't. There's actually a book. I think I haven't read it. It's not a particular interest of mine, of suicide notes, and I'm sure people, academics or researchers, have found a bunch and studied them. But like, I'm sure they cover all kinds of different things. Like Carrie, you were saying, of wanting to give an explanation as best you can to your children, or I'm sure a lot of them also include, like, listen, think what you want, but this has nothing to do with attention. Like, I'm sure they're in there, and I still think people do they listen? Do they embrace that or not? You know?
Well, my question is, why is it bad to seek attention?
Right. Well, that's a whole other.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Like, if
mean,
someone
if you were,
yeah.
yeah, if you were like shot, you wouldn't be like, "Don't seek attention. You've been shot. You're supposed to shut up." You know,
I
someone else
think
might get shot if you say something about it.
I think the
What?
notion of attention seeking is at the core it's viewed as manipulation.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
I mean, as someone who survived the trauma of a partner who literally would threaten suicide as a manipulation tool,
Uh-huh.
I can tell you that no matter how difficult it can be to process in the moment, it's very, 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 very clearly different.
Yeah.
Nobody, that person does not write a suicide note. That person screams in your face and climbs up on the railing to instill maximum fear into you. They're not
Right.
going to be like, "Oh, I've left you a little note here, I'm going to
Right. So
hurt
there's a
myself."
clear
It's
difference.
intense, you can tell the difference. There's no,
Right.
yeah.
Carrie, I want to circle back to something you said. So you said that you destroyed the notes, right?
Yeah, I think I pretty much destroyed anything that I ever written, ever wrote. But I wrote them kind of like in my journal so that they would be there just in case,
Yeah.
that somebody would at least be able to go through my things and be like, oh, this is where she was at, kind of
Do you
thing.
think so? In as much as you can remember, and this might be really hard, like, if you had died and if children or whomever had found that note or those notes, do you think it would have met the purpose you wanted it to meet? That was awkwardly said, but I think you know what I mean.
I think it might have helped take a little bit of the mystery away. Like I come from a family where you don't talk about feelings.
Yeah.
And I think especially with suicide, there's always, for the people that are left behind, I think there's always a, uh like an element of mystery or wanting to know more. Like you want I have survived people's friends and stuff that have taken their own lives, and it never quite leaves you, I don't think, that feeling of, "Oh, I wish I could just be with them one more time or like understand a little bit better or
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
whatever, like have some kind of connection to where they were in that moment." Um, so it probably doesn't help that much, honestly. If somebody's grieving, it probably doesn't help a ton, but maybe a little bit.
I mean, I'm pretty sure, if I had a guess, I'd say more than 99% of people who've ever left notes don't feel like it's complete. Like I nailed it. They'll get it perfectly. Like there's just going to be, like, it's impossible.
Mhm.
And it's an interesting thing because I think I used to ask the question more, and I have no idea why I got away from it. Something just didn't quite feel right on the podcast about, did you leave a note? Did you write a note? In fact, I send my guests questions that I tend to ask before we talk. That question's still there, but I don't ask it as much, and I don't know why. But of those people I did ask, the great majority, and did write a note, the great majority told me they don't have it anymore or they can't find it. Because if they, at the time, as callous as this may sound, I was wondering if they would read it. And I can tell you out of almost 300 conversations, I think I've had maybe one or two people read their note, meaning they don't have them or they don't want to read it. And that's fine. I think it was just a curiosity I had. And maybe also, what's it like to read a note from whatever period of time ago and you're not exactly in the same spot now? What does that feel like, I can tell you, for me, so I lost my best friend many years ago. And the way I learned about it was through the newspaper, because I was abroad. Interesting, Michelle, I was living in Japan. And my mother told me about it because she had read it in the newspaper. And there were, as far as I can recall, 2 newspaper articles about his death. I think he might have gotten a little more coverage because he was a police officer in New York City. And I never saw the note, but in the articles, they referenced that he left a very brief note. And it was brief. It was just, assuming they were being honest, and they were covering it fairly or accurately, it was just like a few lines. So I don't make any particular meaning out of that, but I wonder if he felt this need to write something down. And in my mind, it was like, I'm literally 30 seconds from doing this thing, so I'm just going to bang it out real quick. Sorry, it's not your fault. I love you, ... That kind of thing, Michelle?
That comes to something that I was thinking about a bit ago, which is that I sometimes wonder if people, especially people who are, how would I say, legally minded or process minded, write notes, not necessarily for the loved ones or for anything like that, but write it so that the police don't, question whether it's a murder or question whether it was,
Sure.
at natural causes or something like that, so that it's clear. Because we hear a lot about like the purpose of a note, like when you hear like a detective shows, like, oh, well, we're pretty sure it was a suicide, there was a note,
Right.
and it's like people, I think, get this idea in their head that like the police aren't even gonna like take it seriously, or maybe not even like address it as suicide if you don't leave a note. And being a police officer, maybe like that was in his thought processes when that happened,
Maybe.
And I wonder how much suicide notes are for what we need to say and how much they are for just like procedure,
Right. So it could be about for themselves or procedure, or certainly like what Carrie was saying about others. And I'm sure all of the above apply often. I want to read a question that overlaps with that some from M. She's been here before, obviously not tonight. I don't mean M. Michelle. I mean, she goes by M. And her question was, do you think suicide note actually help people grieve or find closure? And what I'm not clear about is if I assume the way it's framed, it's for the person who's attempting. And then she writes, is this usually the purpose of a suicide note, or is there more than one reason to leave one? And we're just speculating here, obviously. And we've touched on it a little bit. Yeah, any thoughts on that? Just to expand that idea of like, what do you think the temptation is or the reason why people leave notes? Without being, we're not doing research here. Some fancy academic might have more answers than we ever will, but do you have any idea? Even if it's personal?
I mean, for me, it's just a rant. Like I would leave a note so that everybody who I'm not a spiteful person. I'm not a revenge type person. That doesn't motivate me at all. But if I am going to take my life, I want every motherfucker who in any way pushed me or made my life so miserable that I got to that point to know it and know that they should own it. And for me, a suicide note is going to be every much an explanation as it is an indictment.
God, hardcore. All right.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Any thoughts on that?
I think it would be, I mean, it's probably like so unique to every situation, whether it's closure or not for the people left behind. But I feel like probably it would be, I mean, especially if it was really sudden and really secret and people didn't know, you know, that you were struggling and it was just like suddenly you're gone. I think it would, I think it would provide something like I always go back to because it's just been such a huge part of my life is the fact that my grandfather took his own life and it was when my dad was a baby, so I never met him or anything, but he's just been like this weird, really like palpable ghost in my life for my entire life for some reason. And I often think how cool it would be if I had a note
Hmm.
from him or something, because his mother, my great grandmother, was a writer, and her writing was very like she was a good writer. Like it was, you know, there was juicy historical kind of interesting information before he died, and he was her only child. And then after he died, her writing turned into this very surface level poetry about like flowers.
Huh.
And I've often thought um that was like because of the culture that my family is, that sort of British, you know, you don't talk about feelings kind of people that we are, that she had no way to express her grief except she just, all she could do was just write this like
Mm,
really
mm,
banal poetry.
mm.
And so I read her stuff looking for answers about their experience with that, you know, and like I've
Mm.
often thought it would be kind of cool if there was more information about
Yeah.
his death.
It's interesting. I before I started the podcast, and I don't know when, but probably not too much before, there was a period of time, one of my lowest for sure. And I remember sitting, I was living in this space here, sitting on that couch, which is behind me right now. And I say I journal, but I don't really journal because I just feel like I suck at it, which is going to sound weird. Like I just end up writing like today I went to the supermarket. It's like I'm just not access. It just feels dumb. I've tried. Everyone's journaling. You should journal. I'm like, I'm journaling. And this is weird. And I don't want to do this anymore. But I noticed in those notebooks, and I know this because I was looking back at some of them recently, which is also something I rarely do. And there was more than one occasion where I wrote what should absolutely be considered a suicide note. And I did not have plans. I was clearly struggling. I knew that if it was going to happen, it was at some point, probably rather far away. But I wrote a note, and I remember, I think there were 2 of them, and I remember maybe getting a page in and being like, in a million years, I'll never be able to articulate what I'm trying to articulate. So I'm just going to stop. And I think they literally probably stopped like mid-sentence, and it was probably a test run in a way. I think, and I'm very open that I've never tried to take my life, that I've been close several times, that I do consider myself, I don't know, it's a weird expression, like a passive suicide ideator, but I say it only because like that does feel accurate, and it is very fucking real.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm like, but the note made it feel more real. It didn't change anything I was actually doing action-wise, but it was like something about it just felt like I needed to do that.
I'm thinking about the thing that keeps me alive right now is my students who are themselves staying alive because they've listened to me tell them about why I'm staying alive. And how if there's some level of hope for me to live this long, there is for you if that's what you want, And when I think about how the impact that I would have on those kids if I did take my life, and what it would say about my message of, keep fighting, I'll be there to support you as best I can, we can do this together, kind of thing. I realize that there's absolutely nothing that I could say in a suicide note that would do anything to alleviate the destruction of the trust that those that I built between those students.
Michelle, have any of your students? I know you teach English, right?
Yes.
So some of your students have a decent level of English, at least understanding English.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have any of them ever heard your podcast episode?
No.
No.
Nor would I. There's
no,
too much in there that would be, potentially get me in trouble, maybe.
Yeah.
If they found it somehow on their own, that's a different story. But people don't even find my social media accounts or anything like that. Not that I have too many, but
yeah.
So no, and I don't think I would do that. I've talked about it though some, but it's always an individual thing. I don't talk about it like in a group or something like that.
Not a lesson plan. Not part of a lesson plan.
No,
so
no.
for all of you, and I'm thinking about my friend who ended his life, and that little note he left. Whether this is true for you and you have a real example or not, like this is almost like a 2 or 3 part question. Have you lost someone to suicide? And if so, did they leave a note? Did you read the note? Do you wish they had left a note? Does that apply to any of you?
I have lost people to suicide. No one's left a note that I'm aware of.
Okay. Yeah, so the next part of that question, right?
I wish that they hadn't killed themselves and they were still alive. Note or no note, I don't think that would actually change my feeling on that. I would rather just have them here.
So the note probably wouldn't have made much of a difference.
Not to me, no.
Right. Okay. And that I've lost one person. And that's it. There's people I've lost like 4 degrees of separation, but for whatever reason, that's not quite the same thing. But Michelle or Carrie, have you lost anyone to suicide?
Yeah, there's my grandfather who, it's sort of a weird situation because I never met him, but I don't know, he just feels so real to me. It's such a strange thing to live your whole life, kind of like feeling like you have a relationship with someone that you never met. It's just the weirdest thing. And then a really, really close friend died by suicide, and I don't know if she left a note. I have a feeling maybe not,
Yeah.
because she was really struggling with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm.
think when it actually happened, I think she had been pretty out of it for quite a while. So I have a feeling not.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a weird thing with her situation. The police report called it an accidental suicide.
Hmm.
Isn't that the strangest thing?
Yeah.
How do you,
And I never got an explanation for what that meant, or I guess maybe because she had been drinking for so many days.
mm,
I don't know. I don't understand what that was about.
suicide by what is it? They say misadventure or something like
I've never heard
that.
that.
Yeah. No, maybe it's death by misadventure. I'm thinking of, but yeah.
It's words, is what it is. It's words.
Yeah, it's just words.
So so there's at least
Before we
one.
move on, actually, I
Yeah.
wanted to say, I
Sure.
think for practical reasons, when it comes to a suicide note, I have lost one friend whose death we're not too sure if it was a
Mm.
suicide or not. So from a practical standpoint, I don't know if it would help or not for people to like have a definitive, yes, this was intentional.
Mm.
Yeah.
I have nobody in my I mean, trans communities are all online anyway, but nobody in my IRL community of friends has killed themselves, but I've had online friends that did, and there's been times where the note was how we found out,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
they post it, and
Huh.
then you find out later that there's a police report or something, and then that's it. But
So
you
that's
you find out before the police do because they posted about it and told you.
like a reflection of the last decade or 2 decades where people
Mm.
could leave a sort of note on a social media platform and schedule it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Essentially, so that they're gone when you get it. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Is for any of you this might be one of these questions where it would be tough to admit if it were true, but whatever the case, there's actually a book, I believe, and maybe more than one. Just go to Amazon and check, where it's literally the bulk of the book, the content is suicide notes. If I gifted you that book, two of you are checking right now, aren't you?
Yeah.
If I gifted you that book, would there be any inclination for you to read it? Would there be any
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
curiosity or yeah?
I'd
Oh yeah.
devour it.
All of you say
Uh,
yes. Okay, yeah.
I already have.
Oh, you know the book I'm talking about?
Yeah, I have it, and I read it.
What's the name of it? Do you remember?
Nope.
Probably like Suicide Notes.
I think it's very, very straightforward.
I feel like Michelle and Carrie, as they are online right now, are about to find it. Go to Amazon, put Suicide Notes, see what comes up.
There's
Well,
one.
there's one
There's
called
Well, many of
Suicide
them came
Notes.
across as like very angry.
Okay.
Mm.
A lot of them seemed very angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a few when I search, even in Japan, which I find is interesting, like the Japanese Amazon.
Okay.
Most of them are English books, but there appears to be some Japanese as well. So
I wonder how they get those notes, and then I wonder, Henry, like as you were saying, they sound,
so
they sound
I'm sorry.
angry. Hang on.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
sound angry, like because that's curated, right? So that person might have received 500 notes, but curated it in a way where they
Mhm.
just wanted to publish certain kinds of notes that had a certain tone. It's possible. I don't know. What were you? What's funny, Michelle? Yeah, Michelle, you're
I
not
just
supposed to laugh when we're talking about suicide. I told you.
Well, you can blame Amazon. There's a book here called Suicide Notes 3-in-1 Notebook, Day Planner, and Drawing Book, and it's just like a cartoon of a Japanese guy hanging by a noose taking a selfie.
That's
And
so
it's like,
That is so Japanese.
Isn't it? It absolutely is.
The
And
I
only
kind of
reason I
want
get
it.
the only
Right?
I
reason
kind of want it.
the only reason I can get away with saying that, and barely, is because I did live in Japan. It's been a while, and they have some interesting cultural components that are unique to that place. And for some reason, when you
Oh,
said that, I'm like, that feels like Japan.
suicide art in Japanese pop culture has grown to a very, very high level. I can't tell you how many times I have students like open up their, because in my school, I don't want to say too much, but in my school, students are allowed to use their phones in the classroom.
Mhm.
And they also have like iPads or Chromebooks and things like that. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen, I have a student, open up their device in the class in front of me, and their background image is like an anime girl with like knives stabbed through her and cuts all over her and stuff like that. Like, and it's just like daily part of their existence for them. Which, I mean, to be fair, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I'm kind of into that kind of thing too. But like, these are kids. These are like 16-year-olds,
Yeah.
15-year-olds.
Wow.
You know,
There's a
so
there's a former guest of the podcast who, I don't know. I don't usually become friends with my guests, but sometimes it's just case by case. Most of them, I don't think there's a real interest, but for one reason or another, we became friends. And I remember at some point, and I'm digressing a little, but I feel like it overlaps. She wanted me, and I think she asked other people, to write what she called a eulogy, which is accurate. But in my mind was like, in a way, writing a suicide note from my perspective for you. And I remember trying and just not being able to do it. It wasn't like because it was like too emotional. I was like, maybe I'm just not
yeah,
enough of a wordsmith. I was just like, I don't know what to say without it just sounding whatever, trite or glib or weird or whatever, what have you. But I do think there's a for some people certainly a feeling of, like M put in that question she asked. And if you're wondering out there, there's a WhatsApp thread with some of my former guests. Is that the way or one way people get closure or grieve or find some sort of way to, who knows, right? Especially if it's a little less impulsive, right? If it's impulsive, I'm wary to use that word, because even when it's impulsive, that person could have been thinking about it for 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And then there's other people that something happens and they might plan for a month. So it really varies. But I think we all know that, Henri, given that you know of the book, you'll be sending us copies. Thank you. I'm just kidding. It's an interesting book. Suicide Notes.
There's a lot when I do an Amazon search here. Like, I'm surprised how many there are.
Really?
Is that right?
I don't know if I would say a surprise, but I'm more surprised that Amazon actually allows them to be there, I guess is what I'm getting at. But yeah, there's a lot on here.
Well, I don't have any other specific questions, but is there anything else any of you want to share about this topic around the notes? And there'll be plenty more conversations about all kinds of things, you know that, but for today.
I think for me, the one thing that would go, no, sorry, let me rephrase this. The one reason why I would like to hope that I would leave a note if I ever did, reach that point is, and if you've heard my podcast episode, you'll understand, but it's for my son, who, I haven't seen in several years now. Because I want to have some level, I mean, who knows if he'd ever see it, if my mom or my ex would show him later in life, but I want to have some level of control over the narrative of my life and what happened, as opposed to letting biased, abusive people have control of that narrative.
And they will, and they will,
and
they
they
will,
absolutely will.
for sure.
And so part of that note would be, as I said, an indictment of them and other people in my life who did really horrible stuff to me. But part of it would also be an explanation for those who have no other way of knowing, for the future, for my child, and for other people maybe as well, who, I mean, I don't want my child to grow up thinking that I just didn't care, didn't love them, and just, said fuck this and, left. Like, I want him to know that he was loved. I want him to know that these things were beyond what anyone could do about. But I also want him to know that the people who are trying to control that narrative are not necessarily telling you the truth, and are not necessarily innocent.
Yeah.
In it.
Right.
I don't know if that would actually like be a successful thing that would happen.
Right.
But I would want to try,
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure.
Well, thanks for talking. As always, I appreciate it. I love this 4 or 5 number. It's like the right number of people. The conversations are always fascinating to me.
Right.
So I appreciate it. From 3 different countries and several time zones. I want to share with the audience, because some of them might be watching now, but the way social media works, they can watch another time. Right now, there are. I suck. I'm not a big fan of promotion, but I realize I do have to do some of it. So, permit me if I may. Mondays and Thursdays are episodes. You can go on any podcast platform and find it. And this is a YouTube channel. And this video you may see in other social media platforms when I can figure that shit out. It'll take some time, but I'll get there at some point, probably with some help. And there's a few things that I've been trying to do for quite some time. Some of it has to do with funds or lack thereof. But a few of my goals include to transcribe and ultimately translate every single episode so that they're more accessible to people. And I sent an email to most of my guests. Perhaps, Michelle, you weren't there because it didn't apply to you. But at the end of September, we're going to have an event here in North Carolina where I'm essentially going to try to take what we're doing here, not necessarily here, but more on the podcast, in a live setting, and having a conversation with one or perhaps more than one person in front of an audience. So it won't be exactly the same thing, but there'll be the conversation component and a Q&A component. And then I'm going to stay in my car and I'm going to go around the country.
Wow.
Stopping in different cities and trying to do that as much as I can. The main reason for that, and that'll be a lot more information if you're wondering out there, that you will be able to find in the podcast description and the show notes and the website very, very soon, within a week. Because I'm really curious if this can work in real life, what it looks like in real life, how open people are to showing up and hearing this in real life, what risks are associated in real life. I really want to meet some of my former guests because I think that's a fun blast. I'm curious if there are other suicide attempt survivors out there who don't know about the podcast, but who may actually want to show up and share some stuff themselves. Right? So I don't know what's going to happen with that. I think it's probably the biggest risk I'm taking in my life, in part because of money, but and it's in part I'm trying to raise money. So I will be looking for that. I'm not a pest about it, but I will want people to donate. And yeah, we'll see what happens. And I just want to make that announcement both on the podcast and on these lives, because I've learned that just if people don't know about something, then they can't support it or show up or do stuff. So that's why I'm doing that. And I'm excited about it. But I also know if I were 25, I'd be ripping and raring to go, because I'd be just sleeping in the back of my car, not giving a shit what I eat. Right. But that's not the case. So there's a big part of me that's like, realistically, driving all those hours and then you're like really tired, but you got to eat food and you want to make sure you get good rest. I'm like, this ain't going to be easy. But after 5 years of doing this, there's just some really big pull telling me this is the right thing to do and the right time to do it. So I think I only send that email to people that lived in cities that it could have happened. So thus, Michelle, you probably didn't get it. I don't want to cloud your inbox with extra shit, but I will keep people informed. But back to this live. Thanks for sharing about the notes and your ideas, your thoughts about it. And one last question, because we always keep it real, and you've all been my guests, and this is optional to answer. But for context for the audience, I'm wondering, as we speak, it's 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, first week in August. I'm wondering if you're suicidal.
Well, it's 10:30 a.m. here, and if you'd asked me that question at 9:30 p.m. Japan time, yeah, I don't know about right in this moment, but
Okay.
Last night, plenty of things were going on in my head. So
Right. Thanks.
Summer's always that way for me, though, especially with summer break.
Because
no purpose. I hate the sun.
right.
I've got the sun open right now, not open, but the window's open right now for your benefit and your benefit alone.
Okay. Thank you very much for the lighting.
I have seasonal affective disorder is a summer affective disorder.
Interesting.
Very, very depressed in the summer. Yeah, I hate it.
Others you can pass, of course, but that was the question. Pretty straightforward. It's like that's how I roll. Are you suicidal?
I think I'm always a little bit like on some sort of spectrum, a little bit. And I had a ferocious migraine for about 4 or 5 days. So and when I'm in the chronic pain flare, the thoughts can become really overwhelming.
For
So
sure.
I appreciate being able to talk to people who get it, because I've kind of created a weird bubble in my life now where I have so little energy for just anything that's not authentic. And I do kind of live on that precipice of I wouldn't even call it depression. I don't even want to label it like that anymore, but I think I just live in a state of mind where I feel like the world is just so stupid. and I'm just like, why? Like what's the point kind of being here? So I live there a lot, and I try to stay I'm always doing projects just to try to counteract the thoughts, because they can get pretty overwhelming sometimes, the ideating.
Yeah, that what you said about the pain thing, and I don't have migraines, but I've got my own things of pain, and
it's brutal.
Brutal, yeah.
It's
absolutely.
just so awful. The pain, sometimes I almost think of the pain as being like the suicidal aspect of me. Like I almost feel, I don't know if you have any of you guys heard of internal family systems.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting study about like the fragmentation of the psyche. And I definitely have this part of me that's deals with chronic pain, deals with suicidal ideation, but then I have other parts of me that are really creative and really vibrant, and that whole system kind of made a lot of sense. It helped me remove myself from that that I'm a suicidal person, and I should be so
Mm.
ashamed
Mhm.
of myself. Like I had wrapped this sort of mentally ill, suicidal like persona that I should be so ashamed of that person, and then tried to hide that a lot from people in my life, and that's just so exhausting. And then that causes a lot of pain.
Mhm.
Just hiding in shame it's just such a painful way to live. So it's helped me a lot to see, oh, that's just like a part of me that needs a lot of self-compassion,
Yeah.
which is pretty new for me to even entertain self-compassion. um
So interesting.
so
As you're all of you are talking, I'm thinking, I'm like writing down, this is a great topic for another conversation.
Mm.
This pain, chronic pain, definitely a topic for conversation. Something we brought up earlier that the audience may not have heard of is like talking about the word suicide and how sometimes or often we're not even allowed to say it in certain social media platforms, for example. So I'm like writing all of these down. I feel like I'll have enough material for like who knows how long.
speaking of chronic pain, I just want to share something really quick. I'm a
Yeah,
huge Frida Kahlo. I'm crazy about Frida Kahlo. She's like one of my heroes. And she wrote, and a lot of people think she may have committed suicide or
yeah,
taken her own life, or whatever we want to say that.
sure, sure.
I never know the right way to talk about this, but anyway, um, she wrote in her diary just before she died, "I hope the exit is joyful, and I hope to never return." And then she also wrote, "Pain, pleasure, and death are a part of life's revolutionary struggle and a doorway to intelligence."
Mm, that's
So,
interesting.
yeah, she's a pretty cool chick.
Yeah, and I just
Yeah.
got back from Mexico a couple weeks ago. How about that?
Mm.
Random. Any other thoughts before we get back to our lives in our different countries and internal family systems? I don't know if that makes any sense. Just came out of my mouth as things tend to do.
I completely and totally relate to that. I have dissociative identity disorder, and it was actually your podcast that helped me figure that out, helped me get towards that diagnosis. Um,
Like my episode?
and no, someone
Oh,
else's.
someone else's. Okay.
Yeah. Um, but this podcast. Um, and realizing that there's an actual specific voice that's telling you to do some of this stuff sometimes, and then learning how to communicate with that voice and make deals with that voice and re-channel that energy has been very helpful. It's
Mm,
not 100%, you know, cure all for that, because that part of me will never go away. I don't think I will ever stop being suicidal, really, on
mm,
some level. But understanding more about where it comes from and why it isn't just a situational thing is extremely important, not just for me, but for also people who want to understand me or want to learn something from me. So thank
got
you,
it.
by the way.
No, thank you all. I appreciate it. I know you've got your lives and you're doing things, and so I appreciate you showing up and sharing openly and talking honestly and doing all that stuff. So, all right, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody who's watching, and I hope you come back. We got some. Right now, it's weekly. That could change. If you've got some ideas or topics you want us to talk about, send them my way. And maybe it's sometime sooner than later. Even if you're not a prior guest or you want to join us, that's a possibility. We'll see where this thing goes. So we'll leave it at that. So Michelle and Henry and Carrie, thank you very much. I'm gonna stop the live, but you all three feel free to hang out for a little bit before we say goodbye. Okay. Bye, interwebs world.
Bye.